Okay, good morning, everyone. This is Matt Braden from the GPAR team. Welcome to Coffee Talk. Today, we're so happy to have you with us, and we're happy to have Mike McGee with us from the Pennsylvania Association of Realtors. Coffee Talk is hosted by Chris Mattioli, our GPAR 2024 president. He's doing a great job this year, and we're so happy that we're able to bring these coffee talks to you. This is the second or third one I think we've done this year. We have more in the pipeline, so please keep an eye on your inbox for those messages. And there's a lot of more important stuff coming down the pipeline. So make sure you keep an eye for those GPAR messages and make sure to share them within your offices, because there's a lot of things that are going on in these next coming weeks that are super important for everybody to be dialed in on. So with that, good morning, Chris. How are you, President Chris Mattioli?
I'm good, Matt. Thank you. Good morning. Good morning. Yeah, I've been saying July and August is going to be a crazy summer with forms, MLS changes, and how our common practice is going to change. It's going to be quite a crazy summer. But thanks for the intro, and yeah, definitely looking forward to today's coffee talk with Mike, just to give us all a better understanding of how the association works at the state level, his role, and you know, again, with all the things that are in flux here, it's a great opportunity for our members to get some insight as well. So, good morning, Mike. Thanks for taking the time to join us.
Good morning, Chris, and good morning, everybody else who's with us today.
Mike, why don't you take a minute and just tell us about yourself and your role?
Yeah, I guess I'll start a little bit on a personal note. So everybody knows I'm originally from Southeast Pennsylvania, born in Media in Delaware County. I spent a couple of years in Ridley Park, but most of my life was in Malvern, Pennsylvania, before Malvern was what it is today. I'm a graduate of Archbishop Carroll High School in Radnor, Millersville University. I actually did a year at Cabrini College, which now just merged with Villanova, and graduated from Millersville with a degree in political science, and have been at PAR now. This is my second stint at PAR, but I've been there for a little over 7.5 years as the CEO. And in this role, really, I break it down into kind of three areas. My primary responsibility is I'm technically the sole employee of the board of directors, and the staff that works for PAR then works for the CEO. But my job is to work with the 5 members of our leadership team, which is the president, president-elect, first vice president, treasurer, and immediate past president on a day in, day out basis. But then also work with the board of directors to set the strategic direction of the organization and kind of make sure that we're staying on course. So that's one element of the job. The second element is we have 36 staff people, including myself, at PAR. So making sure that we as staff are aligned properly, are working together in the best way possible to execute on the strategic vision that the board has set forth. And then the third component is serving as a liaison and as kind of a representative with our local associations and with the National Association to make sure that we have as good of a line of communication and as good of relationships as we can at all 3 levels of the Federation.
Awesome. Sounds like a lot. Definitely 3 different components there that you have to juggle with that. You said you've been in that role for 7 years, but you said 2 times with PAR. So tell us a little bit about that path to the current role and how that played in the 2 different times there.
Yeah, and I'll start with again a little bit of a personal story. So when I was doing an internship my last semester at Millersville, this was pre-internet. If you wanted to call somebody, you needed to go through a phone book. No cell phones, no anything like that. So I needed a job, and I literally went through the phone book in Harrisburg while I was doing my internship and started calling associations saying, hey, do you have any jobs either in your government affairs department or anywhere. And PAR actually said yes. As a matter of fact, we're hiring somebody for our government affairs department. So I got my heavy duty resume paper and sent that in. The old format that you had to follow if you actually wanted somebody to HR to read your resume. And then I went home and visited my parents one weekend. And again, this is pre-cell phone, so I give them my parents' number for the place for them to call if they wanted to interview me. And my mom came down and said, "Hey, you have this voice recording saying they want to interview you." So if I hadn't gone home and they hadn't checked it late at night, I probably never would have even gotten the call to come in and interview. So in essence, about 6 weeks after I graduated from college, I had my first experience at PAR as their assistant director of government affairs. I was there for 6.5 years. My first 4 years was more on the policy level. We had a CEO change about 3 or 4 years into my tenure. And we brought the lobbying function in-house. It had been a contract lobbyist at the time. And my boss and I then became the two spokespersons for PAR at the state capitol. And then I'll say when it was, in 97, really feel like I'm dating myself here. I got approached by a number of local associations who wanted to set up a regional government affairs program. And actually, GPAR was part of that effort. GPAR, then the Delaware Valley Association, and the Chester County Association of Realtors wanted to have a shared government affairs program, which 25 years ago was a novel concept. So I took that job, and what was basically the first staff person for what is now known as the Suburban Realtors Alliance, which covers pretty much suburban Philadelphia, and GPAR now has their own full-time government affairs person. But that's kind of how I got into realtor world, and then worked for a local home builders association as their executive vice president, and did worked at an economic development organization for about 4 years, and then again 7.5 years ago came back to PAR as the CEO.
Very good. Awesome. You ever think about if you didn't go home that time?
Oh yeah, yeah, that would have been sad.
So tell us, that's about you and your role. Talk to us a little bit about the Pennsylvania Association. Like what's the state membership numbers at? And you mentioned the staff size, but give us a little idea of, how many are in this department and that department, so to speak.
Yeah, so PAR collectively we're roughly between 38 and 39,000 members, and for context, there's roughly 60 to 65,000 real estate licensees in the Commonwealth. So we have a fairly significant percentage of the overall licensee population. We suspect that a reasonable number of non-members are people who are in referral companies who are really not on the day-to-day business side of buying and selling real estate. There are 37 local associations across the Commonwealth. So when we say that we have part of our strategic plan is that local associations are our core customers. We have one association that has 25 members that covers 2 counties, and that ranges from that size to Tri-County, which covers 3 counties and has almost 10,000 members. So that's kind of the level of diversity that we deal with at the state association. So that's provides a little bit of context for why we have to balance what we do and how we do things.
And where is your office? What is the physical location of PAR?
So we are located in Lemoyne, which is a small borough right across the river from the state capitol. For us to get to the capitol, it's 7-minute drive. So we have very close proximity to the Hill and to our legislators. When you look at from a staffing perspective, we own our own building. It's roughly 25,000 square feet. We actually rent part of it out to a medical company. We occupy roughly 14,000 square feet of that space. Around 28, 29 of our staff are physically located in the office. We do have 7 employees who are entirely remote. We have 5 field representatives who are on our advocacy team. And then we have 3 people, actually 2 people who are with our subsidiary company called AIM. And then we have one individual who is in our association services department who is entirely remote. The rest of those people are in the office in our headquarters.
Gotcha. Great. So again, let's flip perspectives. What is the, you know, association member in Philadelphia? I have a GPAR realtor listening that's on here right now. What is their role in PAR and how they work, and what's the expectations from the association of them, and what should they be looking for from that state association?
Yeah, I mean, so in essence, the members are the ones who create the strategic direction of the organization, who set the policies for us. And as I said, we have 38, 39,000 members from across the Commonwealth. PAR has roughly 300 to 400 people who will routinely come to our governance meetings, which we meet 3 times a year, where the committees will meet, the board of directors will meet, executive committee, finance. We'll also meet outside of the regularly scheduled meetings when we have issues that need to be addressed in a more timely manner. But I'm looking at this call alone. Now, Chris, you were on our strategic planning committee or our task force. That group is setting the new strategic direction for our organization and proposing a new strategic direction for the next 3 years. Heather's on this call. She's was a member of, or is a member of, our standard forms task force that's meeting to address forms changes. She's going to be in the leadership team next year. Matt serves on our finance committee. He also serves as the lead for the association executives committee. Roderick has been very involved. So it's these voices coming to Harrisburg, creating the dialogue, working with their peers from across the state to develop a consensus on what we should be doing from a forms perspective, what we should be doing from an advocacy perspective, and where we need to provide value to our members. And it's those 300 voices coming together, and then at the end of the day, a result coming out, and us moving forward with that result.
Yeah, no, thank you. And that's one of the things that I've been trying to do, and having you on here and pushing that type of message, is to get a higher level engagement from our members, whether it's locally or at that state level. I'd love to see, high performing professionals that are out there practicing every day have a say, because I get that question from time to time, like they just don't always understand, but they don't understand and know what's going on because they haven't engaged with it. So come and engage. And you talked about the meetings, like what's the path to attend those meetings? Who's invited? Who's not? Right? Is there, a way that individual could just show up?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a well-known story within our world. I mean, that some of our longest tenured members, people who come back over and over again, it's literally somebody tapping on them on the shoulder and saying, hey, you should come to Harrisburg with me and watch this conversation we're going to have in the legislative committee, or learn how we go through our standard forms review process. And sometimes people don't come back. A lot of times people are like, wow, that was awesome. I can't believe you guys get into the weeds or get into that much conversation about what's going on. And Chris, I think fundamentally what your point is, that you can either be part of the process or complain about the process. And it's just like politics. If you don't like the decisions that are being made by our elected officials, then get involved and let them know what your perspective is. And it's the same thing at PAR. If you don't like what our legislative policy is, come to our meetings. If you don't like some of the forms changes that are coming out, we have forums where you can get up and talk about those things. And that's we're I won't say 100% democratic, but it is a very open process where we expect disparate voices to participate and be engaged.
Yeah, no, I completely agree, Mike. And that's kind of what, or the reasons why that I got more involved is, you could sit there and complain, sit on the sidelines and complain about everything, or, you could be part of the solution. You could be part of the resolution. And if you're not part of the solution, you're inevitably part of the problem by just not getting involved. So definitely see that and have learned that from coming up to Harrisburg and getting involved. So I appreciate your leadership there, and guidance there. Um, so maybe we get the opportunity to get some new people involved or show up. You touched on the board, you touched on this staff. Explain how that all is structured together and works at these meetings. Like who dictates what and how?
Yeah, so the way we're structured, I'll start top down. So we have our board of directors, in my mind, to oversimplify this, is very much like the U.S. House of Representatives. So we have 37 local associations. They get to appoint board members based on their membership size. So you're guaranteed a certain number of board members, but then the more members a local association has, the more representatives they have on our board of directors. So our governance is roughly 220 members serving on our board of directors. So again, when we go through a board meeting, it's 220 people voting on our action items. So for example, we're going to be looking at our budget at our September business meetings. That's 220 people from across the Commonwealth voting up or down whether we're going to approve our budget. Just this past set of meetings, one of the things that was on the docket was a continuation of the electronic forms member benefit. So if you're not aware, as part of your PAR membership dues, you have access to the Zip product, Zip forms. The electronic platform is actually being provided to you for as part of your membership, so you're not paying an additional fee to access that. We had to decide whether we wanted to continue that member benefit because it cost us roughly $300,000 a year to offer that as a member benefit. The board of directors overwhelmingly recommended continuation of that service. So that's kind of what the board of directors does. Below the board of directors, we have roughly 15 standing committees that then funnel recommendations up to the board. So we have legislative committee, we have legislative feedback, we have finance, we have exec, we have standard form feedback panel, we have the standard forms committee. Those are just some of the committees that we have that are comprised primarily of realtor members, and they make policy recommendations to whatever body they're assigned to by the bylaws. And then those policy recommendations are what provide us as staff the guidance on, what do we feel about short-term rentals, or what do we feel about transfer tax increases? And that gives our advocacy team the direction they need. So if legislation is proposed, they say we like this or we don't like this. So that's really quick overview of kind of how we're structured from a governance perspective.
No, thank you for the explanation. And, again, me having personally gone through the process now a few times, I love the way you break it down for someone who hasn't been out there. So hopefully they could get a good or better understanding of it. I'm going to throw one in here that I don't think I mentioned, but nothing earth shattering. I got to experience my first Hill Day That was my first time doing that. And I thought it was really, really interesting. And I thought it was really, really good. Tell us, a little bit about Hill Day, if you don't mind.
Yeah. So was that last week or 2 weeks? Anyway, whenever it seems like about 3 weeks ago. But we had, so what we do is we try to encourage our members to involve and become engaged in the political and legislative process. And part of that is grassroots engagement and recognizing that elected officials respond best to constituents and people who live and work in the area that they represent. So we had roughly 250 realtors in Harrisburg. What I think may have been a little bit underappreciated was we were doing our opening session on Tuesday afternoon, talking about what issues we were going to be discussing with our state legislators. And while we were having that conversation, the Pennsylvania State Senate was voting on one of our top legislative priorities and passed it 49-1. Now that was huge. And then we literally went right into a legislative reception and then Hill Day, where we were able to thank our state senators, except for one person, for their support of an issue that's very important to us, which is regulating wholesalers. But it's the feedback we've received, the feedback our advocacy team has received between the signage that we had up at the Hilton and just the masses of the realtors, the strength of our membership because of the RPAC contributions, because of the advocacy team that we have, and because you're willing to show up and talk about issues that are important to you, that makes a very powerful and potent force that legislators simply cannot afford to ignore. And the feedback we received was tremendous. I was 2 days ago, I was at a panel with a state senator from Bucks County, and he was remarking on how impressive it was to have that many realtors in town, and what a good job our group collectively does.
Yeah, it was definitely just awesome to see everybody there with very like-minded objectives on, the bill, but also a lot of the conversations that I was involved with in different, um, you know, chambers was, you know, just overall how we're doing business, what and how we can help people continue to, increase home ownership, help them with some of the issues that they have with their properties. So it was great. And I think having that one voice is important. And I know Matt talks about that a lot on our local level, right? Like we want our voice to be very consistent and available to be heard at the city council, but then having that opportunity to team up and see it with, these other organizations all within the state and addressing at the state capitol was again, just something new for me and really appreciated it. So thanks to you and the staff for putting that all together and coordinating that.
Well, and Chris, actually, if I could piggyback on that, because I think this goes back to the governance point too, and why actually committees can and task forces can be an important component that maybe sometimes people forget, is that for us to actually the wholesaling bill as it exists today took us a year to come to an internal consensus on what we thought was a workable solution. So it was a number of different conversations that our legislative committee had to have and heard different voices from across the state about what could work. So that's how we ended up having a unified position at the end of the day. But that takes work, that takes time, that takes commitment, and it takes compromise. So we don't necessarily have what is probably the ideal or perfect solution, but it's what we think today is the best alternative and best solution that we could come up with. But it also allows us then to speak with a voice. If we just thrown an idea out without vetting it, without having internal conversations about it, it wouldn't go anywhere because we'd have all these voices fighting from within about, and again, I think that's sometimes what we forget is there's a lot of work that goes in on the front end to make things a little more seamless on the back end.
Yeah, and I have definitely experienced that coming up there a few times now. And, you know, I love when somebody has an idea on how we can improve our level of service to the consumer. But there's a process, to your point, right? There's a process to get that idea to the right committee, to get a consensus, to make everybody understand, to get it to an agreement, to one voice, to push it through the whole association. So, you know, that's where the engagement, right? That's where that member needs to be involved and help drive those conversations and, make those points and, share the experiences and provide facts as to why, this is good or bad, or if something needs to be changed. So I love it. Let's, I know we're, don't have hours here. Everybody's on a tight schedule. Let's switch it up a little bit to the association member benefits, right? Like, what are the key member benefits provided by the association? I know you touched on the one legislative, the finance committee, right, where we talked about prolonging the forums, but what are some of the benefits, or what are some of the other benefits?
Yeah, I would say one of the key areas that our members seem to appreciate a lot is our just listed blog. That's a daily newsletter that goes out to all of our members, and it's designed to provide kind of like your coffee talk, your morning wake up. Here's what's going on in the real estate world. Hope on our team is the primary writer for that content. But a lot of times we'll have one of our attorneys will be talking about some timely issues, whether it's on the forums, whether it's on hotline calls. They'll write an article to address trends that they're seeing. Sherry just wrote an article again about the wholesaling legislation and the Hill Day. So it's really designed to give you that kind of morning what's going on, either in Pennsylvania or on a national basis. So just you can sign up for that. A lot of times people opt out and they miss out on it, but we would encourage you to take a look at that. Aside from the electronic forms member benefit, the intellectual property of the forms, I think, is a huge member benefit. And what I've talked about is, could you imagine in a prior life, or probably 40 years ago, each company had a form, each section of the state had their own real estate form. So if you didn't have some standardization of real estate contracts, the costs and time involved with having an attorney review it, or having people not understanding what was being written in different clauses by different companies, just the process alone of having standardized contracts, I think is a huge benefit for our members. And we have a very, I'll say, rigid process in terms of how we go about this. And I'm sure Heather will come back on and elbow me if I misspeak about how this works. But as Heather's a former chair of the Standard Forms Committee, but we have a standing committee. We have a feedback panel that when we meet, and even during the course of the year, if you don't like section 2 of the agreement of sale, or you think there's a way it can be improved, we take that feedback and we have a list of running concepts that people would like us to see incorporated into the different forms. And then the feedback panel and then the forms committee will vet those at their meetings and figure out what makes sense, what's relevant, what's timely. And sometimes they'll set up specific task forces to go to do a deep dive in the lease or the agreement of sale and make changes, again, based on market conditions, based on law changes. And that's a value add where you don't necessarily have to stay on top of things that are happening at the federal, state, local level. That's what our committee does, to try to keep you in front of changing market conditions. And again, the advocacy thing, we have a great team. We have 9 people in total on our advocacy staff. Again, 5 are field reps. We've been spending a lot more time and resources on the regulatory front, knowing that a lot of particularly local government affairs issues when it comes to stormwater management, when it comes to septic issues, these are more suburban issues, but even PennDOT occupancy issues, they start emanating from state regulatory agencies or sometimes federal agencies, and then work their way down at the local level, and that could have an impact on development projects. So again, we're trying to get a little more in front of those issues so that we can be a better resource for our members and our local associations. And we also have affinity programs that Kevin Giuliano and our staff is responsible for identifying products or services that might potentially help you save money. We recently partnered with a company called CapCare that provides, among other things, potential access to a health insurance benefit. So that's something that is just recently came out a few months ago. So those are just some of the benefits involved at PAR. And again, we have the legal hotline as well.
So definitely big fan of Just Listed. And I know as a local association, we rely on that. And personally, I will have that sent out to some newsletters that I send out to agents and or, customers, with some links on it. There's always a lot of good content there. So yeah, I would definitely encourage those who are not subscribed or, maybe unsubscribed when their mailbox was filling up pretty quickly. There's a lot of good, content there to refer to. And oftentimes when we have conflict within the office, if we have some issues that come up with maybe transactional, we'll often use those Just Listed articles because sometimes they provide a lot of clarity on issues that are current that we're seeing, come up a lot lately. And definitely the forms, without a doubt have witnessed changes made through that process that you talked about. And obviously, the most recent visit, there's a lot of changes coming. I know the new forms are coming out July 1st. I've been pushing a lot of people to that July 2nd broker meeting where they're going to talk about those forms. So a lot of work there and heavy lifting done there. And then you mentioned, I think one of the biggest and maybe underrated, but I do see a lot of engagement with the legal hotline. Can you just give another, like a little deeper synopsis of what exactly the legal hotline does and is there for members?
Yeah, absolutely. So the legal hotline's been in existence for 30 plus years now, and in about 5 years ago, we made the decision to bring that as an in-house function. Jim Goldsmith had been our historical provider of that service, did a tremendous job building it, setting it up. We transitioned it in-house so that we could have better opportunities to collect data and analyze trends on where what kind of calls we were getting and what kind of information you guys needed. But in essence, you have access to 4 attorneys. We have 4 in-house attorneys. The legal hotline is open from 9 to 3. The way that the process typically works is you'll leave a voicemail that'll give, or you'll send your question by a form. That gives the attorney the opportunity to research the question that you have left. Again, make sure that you leave your name, your contact information, but they'll give you a call. I want to be very clear, they are not there acting as your attorney. They are providing you guidance and advice, but they're not your counsel. And in some cases, if your question is something where they think you need to hire counsel, they will tell you that. And they will also very likely ask you if you have spoken to your broker yet. and I'm saying that out loud because unfortunately, we do get a lot of calls from agents who haven't even spoken to their broker and probably should have started there. So that's probably something that not probably, that is something that I would encourage agents to do, is have that conversation prior to calling the hotline. But again, it's on general real estate practice issues, forms issues. We tend to get a lot of landlord tenant calls. We do get forms calls, and we get practice issues are really kind of the top three areas that we are experiencing calls. On average, we'll get somewhere around 6,000 calls a year to the hotline.
Yeah, and I know that my experience there is I will sometimes be in, conflict resolution mode between agents, and someone will say, "Oh, well, I called the legal hotline," and I always push, to the forms committee, the guidelines on the website, on the PAR website, not just the forms. I think the guidelines is probably one of the more underused resources. I think those guidelines, I have them all in PDF format. I send them all to my agents when there's questions or an interpretation issue comes up. But I see the hotline really as a great resource to help, dissect those two, because sometimes there's those opportunities where people just have a little bit of a different definition of some of the things, so they work through that. But it's always great perspective they provide. I wanted to go back to the forms, and I spent some time working in another state, and they did not have state forms. And man, to your comments there, there were so many different levels of common practice and what was used. And it's like some of the geography was really small, and like, no, here's how you did it, and here's what you had to use to get a sale here versus there. And no, this part does attorney review, this doesn't, who writes an offer, a presentation versus an agreement is sale. Like, with your role, you're meeting nationally a lot of counterparts, right? At times, I think I have an idea, but you tell me, where do you think Pennsylvania sits in, how we do business and how we conduct business?
I mean, I'll quote. I mean, Bill. Many of you know Bill Loveland. He's our president elect. He does practice in a number of different states too, or his company does. And he's commented to me that he thinks we're probably in at least the top 5 states in terms of the quality and number of forms that we offer as a member benefit. And I would tend to agree with that. There are some states that they're not allowed to offer forms. There's some states where the real estate commission is the organization that is in charge of forms development. So I think the decision that was made, well, it's interesting because I wasn't, many years ago, there were a number of locals who did their own forms. And there was a lot of politicking that went on to try to get the locals to stop doing their own forms and kind of adopt the PAR standard, for lack of a better term. So it was, again, a process. There was a lot of communication. It's part of our internal process. Like, we have oil and mineral and gas leases or clauses that are in some of our forms, mainly because that's a big chunk of business for the western part of our state. So we had to make sure that was included into a form. So I think we've done a tremendous job building it, growing it, maintaining it, and evolving as a state to where the locals 100% are behind us providing this as a service.
And that leads to and first off, yeah, I agree. Like, I didn't want to put my opinion ahead of yours, but like, I think we've made it, just so much easier for our members to do business and do it well, and have the resources they need to get the job done, to to focus on, the relationship with the client and helping the client. They don't have to get stuck worrying about which form to use or what is the best common practice. There is that consistency. But that's come because of the advocacy, right, at the state level and all the different local associations. And to your point, that's a process. Like, how did that evolve? How did that come about or come to fruition over the years?
Well, and again, I was more in the advocacy department, but my recollection was, I think like RAAC had their own forms and Pittsburgh had their own forms, and they were a source of non-dues revenue. They were a source of local pride. So there was, conversations about what the pros and cons of maintaining your own separate forms. As business practices evolved, as members started going beyond traditional geography, it became more and more important to have a more uniformity. And I think you're starting to see that even in today's market, where somebody traditionally might have stayed in Philadelphia. Now maybe they're going into parts of Delaware County, and if there was just a Philadelphia way of practicing, and the Delaware County way of practicing, then you don't have the continuity and the consistency that a statewide form gives you. So it was conversations, it was compromise, as I said before, and recognizing past leaders at some point saying, yeah, we're better off working together as opposed to working in opposite directions.
Yeah, and I just think it's, I'd like to give credit to you, you and this staff for, managing probably what aren't always easy conversations, right? Between some of those people that want to hold on to something or different opinion on what the best way moving forward is. And again, being up there watching, chairs, co or vice chairs, but then staff involvement, your team, just helping manage and, keep the energy positive, but keep it moving forward, is definitely something that I've recognized. So I want to give you and your team kudos there, buddy. So
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I to that point, and I think it is important to recognize history and recognize the value of organizations, and even, I'm looking at your group, recognizing that leaders before you made good decisions and made hard decisions at difficult times to get you to a point and set you up where you actually could have success is critically important to me. Like, we're here now, but what we're doing now is going to impact whoever's running PAR 30 years from now. So it's about trying to maintain that momentum, the right systems and processes that we can just continually build on. And GPAR is in good shape with current leadership. That's also a reflection on what past leadership has done to kind of get you there.
yeah, absolutely agree. So that past leading up to the present, we talked about the forms and some of the challenges. I mean, obviously, our advocacy efforts to date, what do you see coming up? And obviously, the big elephant in the room is, the current changes that are going to happen, in August, right? How do you see PAR supporting the members? How do you see the members helping support the overall goal of what we're trying to achieve? And what are some of the biggest lifts you think coming up?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest lift over the next 2 months is definitely uh, getting the compliance together for our members for the lawsuit. In the short term, while it doesn't affect it doesn't affect us directly. Uh, Associations that own MLSs and MLSs who are separately owned have to opt into the NAR settlement, which that process is kind of finalizing itself out over the next week or so. From a PAR perspective, getting the rollout of our forms right is pretty much what our immediate focus is. And again, Heather was or is on the task force that has been charged with reviewing existing forms and updating them to provide the most options for members to assist them in complying with the terms of the settlement agreement. So that rollout plan is, as Chris, as you said, the draft forms are going to be available for member review after July 1st. There's going to be a broker-only program on July 2nd. And then on July 6th and August 7th and August 23rd, we're going to be doing member webinars to go through the forms. As of now, we're thinking they're going to be about 2 hours long. And the goal would be to try to chop them down into manageable bites so that people can review them later. If they want to just do, the 15-minute version on the listing agreement, then that'll be segregated as a separate video out of the 2-hour section to make it a little bit more digestible. But that's the plan. So that's probably the biggest lift. The second component of this is trying to get in front of consumers a little bit more to explain what the impact of the settlement is going to be. Our leadership team had a conversation a few months ago, and the conversation was basically not only sellers going to have a different experience, but buyers in particular are going to have a different experience because of this lawsuit. And more specifically, the lawsuit says the settlement says before you show a home to a buyer, you have to have a written service agreement with them prior to showing them that property. So while we have had buyer agency in the Commonwealth for over 30 years, that's above and beyond what our state law requires. So we think that there might be some consumer confusion and perhaps fear of the idea of, hey, Chris, I'm calling you. I just want to see 123 Main Street. You're throwing me this contract in front of you and say, well, I can't do it until you sign this. That's not what they're used to. So we're putting together some messaging, not only to reinforce the value of using a realtor and the value proposition that they have, but letting them know that they need to be thinking about the transaction a little bit differently, their relationship with their agent a little bit differently, and come prepared to the home buying and selling process with a little bit different of a mindset. So that's part of the key messaging. GPAR was part of a grant application that we put in along with 18 other local associations from the Commonwealth that we just got some funding approved through NAR. So we're going to be using the idea is basically getting in front of media outlets, doing op-eds, trying to make sure consumers are aware of what's coming down the pike. And again, from a member perspective, making sure that they are as comfortable as possible with the forms so that when August 17th hits, they're ready to go.
No, I love it. And you hit on, obviously the key points that have been the focus of a lot of the conversations on on the front lines, for lack of a better description, right? Agent to agent or agent, the water cooler talk in the offices there. I want to ask you a question I don't think there's a good answer for yet, but it's something that I hear a lot. So there's a compliance part of this, right? And this conversation came up in Harrisburg. The question that keeps coming up that I get a lot on the local level is, okay, there's always been compliance, but then there's enforcement, the enforcement arm. Like, do we have any real clarity yet as to, how this is going to be enforced and at what level and what the repercussions may or may not be yet? And like I said, I'm not trying to put you on the spot. I don't think there's a good answer to that yet, but I'm just curious from your perspective what you see.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the messaging from NAR is that um, it's the MLSs who are going to be responsible for the compliance component of it, because this only applies to MLS participants. So, and again, this partly goes back to the consumer education side of things, where we don't want buyers signing multiple concurrent either agency or exclusive buyer agency agreements, and then you think you have a deal with me and Matt thinks he has a deal with me, and then who's the procuring cause? So, and again, that's where, at least what I've heard of a couple of MLS, is it'll be a complaint driven process where you think you're working with me, and then you see me working with Matt, you're going to complain to the MLS, say, well, who has the agreement or who doesn't, and who has signed this or who hasn't. So that's the initial read that we are being advised from NAR, and I think from a global perspective, what the plaintiff attorney has been saying is that if he is seeing rampant, I'll say, people trying to circumvent the terms of the agreement or the settlement, or companies trying to circumvent the terms of the agreement, then he'll come after them. So how legitimate that is, I don't know, but that's the narrative that is out there. And again, I think this is why it's just really important for us to try to get in front of consumers so that they know the world's going to be different. And again, our members need to know what the rules are as well.
Yeah. No, thank you. Thank you. I think that it's definitely going to be evolving, right? Things are going to be ever changing and potentially even changing pretty quickly. But, you know, I've always advocated for, just trying to do right. If you do right by people, things tend to work out. And, I like sometimes my silly analogies, but there's still going to be the opportunity where someone's going to be asked to show a house before meeting, having a buyer consultation and sitting down and learning the contract. They just need to understand that's not putting them in a procuring cause situation. It's not circumventing the rules. You're at that family affair, and there's a house up the street, and next thing you know, your cousin says, "Oh, I'm thinking about looking at that," and you decide to look on showing time to see if it's available. That's a decision that agent needs to make, because it's not against state law, but there's a compliance level. So you could certainly, we're going to see these case by case situations come up from time to time. That's all. So, Mike, what didn't I ask you that you wanted to talk about? What are some of the things maybe I didn't touch on that you really wanted to highlight from the state level?
I mean, I think we've covered quite a bit. I guess while we're still on the topic of the settlement, there is a great resource that NAR has put out there on facts.realtor. There's a number of practice questions that they go through where they talk about the open house question, or they talk about, what is the compliance mechanism supposed to be look like. So that has been a good resource that NAR's attorneys kind of go through what some of the common questions are, FAQs, and provide some answers. So I'd highly recommend both brokers and agents take a look at that. And again, I think it's going to be an interesting time as we evolve moving forward. I'm still excited for the future of the industry. I know it's challenging out there, but I know too that realtors are some of the most optimistic and passionate people that I have ever worked with, and they are creative, they are resilient, and I happen to believe that this is an opportunity for the industry to actually shine and raise the level of professionalism, which has always been one of the underpinnings of the realtor organization. It's why NAR was first set up, was to raise the bar and show consumers that what we're bringing to the table matters, that there's value to it. And it's just a matter of being able to articulate that value effectively to your clients and customers that's really changing here. And I think that's a great opportunity as opposed to negative. And work with your brokers on how to solidify that. And I think things will be fine.
Couldn't agree more. And I appreciate you saying it, that I think conflict breeds opportunity. This is an opportunity for us to raise our level of customer service and the experience that the consumer has in the home buying process or home selling process. And, we can just grow from this and continue to do better. And I am very much appreciative that you're holding the reins at the state level and helping us get there and do what we need to do with you and your staff. So I just want to take another quick moment to thank you for joining us today, sharing with us your experiences and your knowledge and what got you to where you are today and how you help, our members on a day-to-day basis overcome some huge obstacles. So thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you, and I appreciate the opportunity and the partnership with you, Chris, and with Matt. He's been a great resource for us at the state level too. So thank you for having me here today.
All right, great. Matt, I'm going to hand it back to you for some closing remarks.
All right. Great conversation today between Chris and Mike. Thank you so much for all that insight, Mike. That was some good stuff. And folks, we just ask you to keep an eye on your inbox because we're going to be pushing out those different training opportunities that Mike spoke about. And again, one of the key takeaways, I think what Mike said there towards the tail end, that facts.realtor page is really, really chock full of good stuff. It's in our resource page too. If you go to the GPAR website, we have NAR settlement drop down there, and there's a whole links to everything, one-stop shopping there for sure. So please, everybody keep an eye on your inboxes. Stay tuned. And again, thank you so much for a great coffee talk. Enjoy the rest of your day. Take care, everybody.
Thanks, Matt. Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye now.
Thank you, everybody. Have